In the dark shadows, in the white cold, fearlessly we search for knowledge new and old. We drink the strong spirits and read the ancient tomes. The order of the Abracast. We are the brave and the bold.
Worthy reader and true inquirer into the secrets of nature, marvel not that in the old age of this world, when it seems to have one foot already in the grave, I have determined to write this tract, although all libraries are already full of books on this subject, of which, however, the greater part are false and weary, merely the rough and powder of philosophy. I have written it not for my own pleasure, but for your advantage, that by pointing out the foundations of truth, I might lead you back from the pathless wilderness into the right way, which is certainly for your own interest. As far as I am concerned, I have long known all that I seek to know in regards to this matter, and have no need for many books, seeing that during this last 22 years I have read and reread all the works that fell into my hands, including numerous manuscripts as well as many printed volumes. In this, my tract, you will find the subject set forth, and the true solution given, not only theoretically, but also from a practical and allegorical point of view, with a clearness and lucidity such as I believe to be almost unparalleled in any previous philosophical treatise. In quoting, I have always been careful to give exact reference so that you may look out the passage for yourself, and by diligently considering it and sharpening your understanding, I could more easily have composed this treaty and made myself known to the brethren of the Golden Cross, if I had left out those references, but for your sake, I decided otherwise. Do not wonder that I conceal my name and refuse to appear to you face to face. I have come forward, not for the sake of any paltry glory or for worldly praise, but to do you good. Moreover, my teachers, even the true philosophers, advised me not thus risk my life for the sake of obtaining a high place in the world's esteem, to expose myself to greedy robbers, or to give occasion for many crimes by the prostitution of this profound secret. No doubt the gentle reader has learned by the works of Svengulius that whenever he sheathed himself openly to the powerful, he went in constant fear of his life. Experience teaches us many philosophers who gave no thought to their personal safety have been killed and deprived of their tincture by greedy and powerful robbers, and it stands to reason that on any one going about with a great treasure in his hand must fall prey to brigands. Svenvigius concealed his name by an anagram. Thus, also a short time ago, another philosopher and brother of the Golden Cross, whose real name has long been familiar to me, concealed it beneath an anagram and made himself known to his friends by an enigmatical designation. Why, then, should I place myself at the mercy of this impure world? Permit me, rather, dear friends, to follow an example of the sages and leave the rest to the thrice God and great God, who will make my true self known to you in good time, if it be for the glory of his name and for your and my good. Do not be eager to inquire after my name, for even if you should get to know it or become personally acquainted with me, you would have to rest satisfied with the contents of this tract, for I have solemnly promised two philosophers, Bernard, Count of Trevisan and Nigians, that I will not betray to any one that has been revealed in this book, neither be anxious to ask whether I actually possess this precious treasure. Ask rather whether I have seen how the world was created, whether I am acquainted with the nature of this Egyptian darkness. What is the cause of the rainbow? What will be the appearance of the glorified bodies at the general resurrection? What is the most indelible color? Of you that rightly understand this little book, I will inquire whether you have seen that great salt sea without any corrosion and raised sufficiently to the moisture of all nature to the summits of the high mountains, and tell me where there is sulfur out of sulfur and mercury out of mercury, or where sulfur springs from mercury and again mercury from sulfur. When was there placed before your eyes the idea of the most fervent love? The male and the female embracing each other so closely that they could no more be torn asunder, or through unsearchable love becomes one. If you understand what I am alluding to, and have performed the experiment with your own hands, I see it with your own eyes, I welcome you as a fellow partakers of this mystery. I have no dearer wish than to enjoy your familiar intercourse, for which reason I have also sent forth into the world this little tract. If anyone complains of the difficulty of our art, let him know that in itself it is perfectly simple, and can present no obstacle to those who love God and are held worthy by him of this knowledge. If anyone blame me for setting forth these truths of this art too plainly and clearly so as to render it possible for anyone to gain the knowledge thereof, I answer that I have indeed explained them with the sufficient lucidity for those who are worthy and foreordained of God, but that is unworthy can derive no profit from them. Some too foolish, too shallow persons. I have several times expounded this art in this simplest manner, and even word for word. But they despised it only, and would not believe me that there is exhibited in our work a twofold resurrection of the dead. Our art, its theory as well as practice, is altogether a gift of God, who gives it when and to whom he elects. It is not of him that wills or of him that runs, but simply through the mercy of God. Although I had diligently studied the art for 17 or 18 years, yet I had, after all, to wait for God's own time and accept it as a free gift. No one need doubt the truth, or certainly of his art. It is as true and certain, as surely ordained by God and nature, as it is the sun shines at noontide and the moon shoons her soft splendor at night. But I must conclude this preface and gird myself for writing the tract itself. But ye beloved brethren of the Golden Cross, who are about to learn how to enjoy and use this most precious gift of God in secret, do not remain unknown to me. And if ye know me not, be sure that the faithful will be approved, and their faith become known through the cross, while security and pleasure overshadow it. God be with us. Amen. This is the golden tract concerning the stone of the philosophers, a parable. featured in the Hermetic Museum by Arthur Edward Waite, 1893. Oh, shit, I shouldn't have doxed him.
The Abracast, occult, history, conspiracy, and violence.
Recording from the Great Salt Sea without any corrosion. It is John Towers, and I am the Abracast. Wait, I'm John Towers, and this is the Abracast. Thank you guys for tuning in. I have a fun one. I've been kind of holding on to this one for a while, so I'm glad to be able to unleash it here. Again, the featured book is The Hermetic Museum by Arthur Edward Waite, dated 1893. So, do I have any housekeeping, cleaning to do? No. This month's Abracast, the Fellow Craft episode on Patreon and Subscribestar is part 3 of our Atlantis exploration. It's a fun one. It's a good one. So before we get started here, go ahead and man your vessel of the art and raise it to the sky and join me in thanking my Patreon and Subscribestar supporters. Thank you guys for your support. I appreciate it. I love you. And due to the Water of the Art operation, I just did a ritual magicianal thing on Wednesday. And I'm actually going to be a guest on another podcast. I don't know when that is being published, so I don't want to talk about it yet. But that's going to take place on I think it's going to take place on Saturday afternoon. So I'm behind on my phone calls. So I owe a couple people some vessels of the art. And you will be getting those out soon. And you $10 folks that I owe you some wizard water that's going to be going out soon as well. And then if I owe you phone calls, I'm going to get on it. I swear I'm going to get on it. So here's to you. Thank you guys for your support. Here follows a parable, which the mystery of the whole matter is declared. Once upon a time, when I was walking abroad in the wood and considering the wretchedness of this life and deploring that through this lamentable fall of our first parents, we had been reduced to this pitiable state, I suddenly found myself in a rough, untrodden, and impracticable world path, which was beset with briars. Then I was afraid, and I strove to retrace my steps. But it was not in my power to do so, for so violent a tempest blew upon me from behind that it was easier to take 10 steps forward than it was to take one backwards. So I had to hurry forward and follow the rugged path up and down hill. After a while, I reached a beautiful meadow and surrounded with heavy-laden fruit trees, which the inhabitants of this place called the Meadow of Happiness. And there I met a crowd of decrepit men with gray beards, one of whom an elderly personage. I had a long, darkish beard, who also I knew by name, and whose face I had never seen. And these men were discussing various subjects like the goodness and wisdom of God, all natural objects, and especially the great mystery which lies hid in nature, which, they said, God conceals from the whole world and makes his own to a few who truly love him. And I listened to them for a long time, for I was pleased with their discourse, till I thought that somewhere, talking rather wildly, not in regard to the substance and the method, but as concerns parables and similitudes, which were the figments of Aristotle, Pliny, and others. When I heard these things, I could no longer contain myself, and like Saul among the prophets, I began to give my opinion, and to refute those futile assertions by arguments drawn from experience and by reason. Some of them agreed with me and began to test my knowledge with many questions. But I was so well grounded that I stood the test, to the admiration of all. They all marveled the soundness of my knowledge and affirmed with one voice that I should be received into their fellowship. These words filled me with great joy, but they said I could not be their brother until I knew their lion, and its internal and external properties. They told me I must summon up my whole strength to subdue him. I confidently replied that I would leave no stone unturned to obtain this object, for their kindness affected me so that I would not have left them for all the wealth of this world. All right, so I'm just going to stop here and talk for a minute. So we got a lot of stuff to unpack here. It starts out kind of like he's lamenting the material. He's like lamenting the material world. Like there seems to be like a little bit of gnosis stuffed in here just at the very beginning, real fast. You know, he's wandering around the woods, considering the wretchedness of his life. and he's talking about he's throwing shade, he's talking shit about this fall of our first parents that had reduced the whole world to this pitiable state. It sounds like a man that's about to get red-pilled, right? All right, let's go check this dude out as he goes to confront this lion. Therefore, they conducted me to the lion. And they were at great pains to declare to me his nature, but no one would tell me how I must treat him at first. Some of them did indeed mutter a few words on this point, but so confusedly and obscurely that scarce 1 in 1,000 would have understood their meaning. However, they said that when I had bound him without being harmed by him, by his sharp claws and his terrible teeth, I would know all the rest. And this lion was old, fierce, great, and terrible to behold, with his flowing yellow mane. And then I repented of my temerity, and I would gladly have retreated if I had not been held to my purpose by my vow. And the old men surrounded me, so I carefully descended in. Listen to what he's saying. I carefully descended into the lion's den, and I strove to pacify him. But he glared upon me with red eyes. Just a few things from the Pentecost sermon here. We know that he had a yellow mane, and he has red eyes. So we know from the Magnum Opus of Alchemy, if you go back to the feature topic links, you'll see a section on alchemy there. And the Magnum Opus, the Magnum Opus of Alchemy is there. But this just came up in our Pentecost sermon when we were talking about the stages of the alchemical process. It starts at black and white, and then it turns red and yellow, or yellow and red. This is that Tool song. Black and white are all I see. In my infancy, red and yellow then came to be, reaching out to me, lets me see. Do 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 do. So here we're already getting alchemical code for this process, but he also started the whole thing. In this preface, he gave a big clue of what he's talking about. So I wanted to point the color stuff out. And it's I imagine it's going to get even more colorful here. It frightened me so that I could hardly stand upon my feet, and I thought it was my last hour had come. But calling to mind what one of the old men had said to me when I entered the den, namely, that many had undertaken to tame the lion, but only few had accomplished it. So I summoned up the courage, and I tried several artifices, which I had been learned by diligent training. Moreover, I had some knowledge of natural magic, therefore I relinquished my blandishments, and I seized him gently, skillfully, and subtly. So, need to point out here that what we're looking at seems to be depicted on the Waite Rider Tarot card deck for the Strength card. That almost before he knew what I was about, I had drawn all the blood from his body, and from his very heart and bowels, and the blood was red indeed. And then I proceeded to dissect him, and I made the most marvelous discovery. His bones were white as snow, their quantity more considerable than that of the blood. And when the old men stood around the den and had watched our struggle, saw this, they began to converse with great eagerness, as I could see from their gestures. For being in the den, I could not hear their words, but anon their dispute began to run high, and I could distinguish these words: "He must bring him to life again if he wishes to be our brother." Therefore, without further delay, I stepped out of the den into the large open space. And then suddenly, I know not how, I found myself upon a very high wall which rose more than 100 yards into the air. But the top was not more than a foot in width. Oh boy. That's what I feel like when I'm cleaning up my gutters. And along the middle of it ran an iron battlement of great strength. Now, as I passed along, I thought I saw one walking before me to the right side of the battlement. When I had followed him a short distance, I became aware of another person following me on the other side. But whether it was a man or a woman, I could not undertake to say. This person hailed me and said that there was more convenient footing on this side than on mine. This I was quite ready to believe, for the battlement, which was on the middle of the wall, made a high path so narrow as to render progress extremely difficult at such great height indeed. I noticed that some of those who followed me actually fell. Therefore, I got over the battlement onto the other side and proceeded to the end of the wall, which presented a most difficult and dangerous descent. And then I was sorry that I had deserted my own side, as I could neither advance nor retreat. But remembering that fortune befriends the bold, I attempted to descend by using my hands and my feet, and I got down safely. Now, when I advanced a little further, I put away all thoughts of danger, and I forgot all about the wall and the battlement. Then, lighting upon a certain place, I found a white and red roses. White and red roses. Black and white are all I see. Red and yellow then came to me. But the latter were more abundant, so I gathered some of them and I stuck them in my cap. In that place were some most beautiful women. A neighboring garden and a number of young men were to be seen. But a wall which surrounded the garden prevented the latter from joining the women. They were eager to do so, but were not allowed to go around the garden to find the gate. The sight moved me to pity, and therefore I hastily went back to my smooth path along which I had come, and soon reached some houses, among which I expected to find the gardener's cottage. But I found there many men. This guy's just trying to get with the chicks, and all he keeps finding are dudes. Many men who each had their own cell, and very few there were two living together. They were busy at work, each laboring by himself. Their work was a kind, long, and familiarly known to me, indeed far too well known, and I said to myself, "Behold, Here are many persons at work upon vain and foolish experiments which have certain specious plausibility, according to each man's idiosyncrasy, but no real foundation in nature. Surely you, too, will obtain forgiveness. At least I would not suffer myself to be detained with these barren futilities. And I went on my way, and I reached the gate of the garden. Some looked askance at me, and I was afraid that they would prevent me from carrying out my purpose. Others murmured and said, "Look, this fellow presumes to approach the gate of this garden. And we who have spent many years in these horticultural labors have never gained admittance. How will we jeer at him if he meets with a repulse?" But I paid no attention to their talk, for I knew the interior of the garden better than although I had never been in it. And approached the gate with a double locked, and in which there appeared to be no keyhole. But soon I perceived a keyhole which would have escaped any common observer. So I inserted my master key, called by some the adulteress, which I had diligently fashioned for the purpose, and pushed back the bolt and entered. After passing this gate, I came upon other bolted gates, which, however, I opened without any difficulty. Multiple penetrations into this gate. So I entered the garden, and I found in the middle of it a small square garden, which was surrounded with a rose hedge covered with beautiful roses. And as a little rain was falling, and the rays of the sun shone upon it, I beheld a rainbow. But it was hastening past the small garden to that place where I thought that I could aid the young women, when behold, there came forward the most beautiful of all of the maidens, arrayed in silk and satin, with the most beautiful of youths, dressed in a scarlet robe. They walked arm in arm in the rose garden and carried many fragrant roses in their hands. And I greeted them and I asked, "Hey, how'd you get over?" "This, my beloved bridegroom," she said, "helped me. And now we are leaving this pleasant garden and hastening to go to our chambers to satisfy our love. I am glad I returned, that without any trouble on my part, your desires have been fulfilled. But you see how much trouble I have taken on your behalf, having traversed this great distance in so short a time. And then I came to a water mill built of stones, where there were no flour bins or other miller's requisites, and yet I saw wheels driven around by the water. And I asked the decrepit miller for the reason, and he told me the grinding took place somewhere out of view. The grinding took place somewhere out of view, he says. And the same moment, I saw a miller entering a place by a small bridge, and I immediately followed him. When I passed this bridge, which was on the right side of the wheel, I paused and beheld a wonderful sight. In a moment, the wheels were above the bridge, and I saw very black water with white drops. And black and white are all I see. The bridge was only about 3 inches wide, and by clinging to the rails, I got safely back without being wetted at all. And I asked the old man how many wheels he had. And he answered, "I got 10 wheels, man. Yo, bro, I got 10 wheels." "How many wheels do you have?" "I got 10 wheels." "Is this the Sephiroth?" "This is the tree of life." The Sephiroth on the tree of life. The 10 wheels. I was troubled by the marvelous incident, and I would gladly have known its meaning, but I felt that it was a labor lost to ask the old man any questions, so I departed. Before the mill was a raised platform on which some of the aforesaid old men were walking and fro in the warm sunshine. Wait, they were walking to and fro on the warm sunshine, discussing a letter which they had received from the faculty of the university. I guessed the tenor of the letter, and feeling sure that it concerned me, I addressed them with a question to that effect. It does concern you, they said. The wife whom you married a long time ago, you must keep forever, or else we must tell our chief. You need not trouble yourselves about this matter, I said, for we were born together. We brought up together as children, and now that I have married her, I will never forsake her, but cherish her until the last breath. Nay, even death itself will not sever us. It is well, they said. Your wife is satisfied too, and you must be joined together. I am content, I said. It is well, they repeated, for thus the lion will be restored to life, and it will be more powerful and more active than he was before. And then I remembered my labors, and I knew my certain sign in this matter was concerned, not myself, but a very good friend of mine. These thoughts had crossed my mind, and I saw our bridegroom and his beloved bride, both clothed in aforesaid garments, come forward, eager to be joined together. This sight gladdened me, for I had been afraid that the whole matter concerned me, and now when the bridegroom in his bright scarlet robe and the bride, whose silk dress gave out shining rays, reached the old men, they were straightway joined together. And I marveled that the maiden, who was said to be the mother of her bridegroom, was so youthful in appearance that she might have seemed his daughter. But I know not what sin they committed, except that the brother and the sister, who had been drawn to each other by such passionate love, that they could no more be separated, and being charged with incest. Whoa, this took a weird turn all of a sudden. They were shut up forever in a close prison, which, however, was transparent as glass, and it arced like the heavenly vault, so that all that they did could be seen from without. Here they were to do penance for their sins with ever-flowing tears and true sorrow. All their clothes and outward ornaments were taken away. None for their servants and friends were allowed to be with them. But after they had received sufficient meat and drink, the later taken from the aforesaid water, here's to you.
Learn more at abracast.com. Get bonus content by signing up for the mailing list. Get all that, plus many exclusive episodes by supporting the show at patreon.com or subscribestar.com.
Hi everyone, I'm Jess, and I host the podcast Shoes, Booze, and Tattoos. I like to discuss a little bit of everything that's weird or unusual, from hauntings and folklore to true crime and history. I'm not only a podcaster, but I'm also a practicing witch, so I've made sure to dedicate a few episodes to the subject and dispel some of the common misconceptions about the craft. So if this sounds like your cup of tea, you can find Shoes, Booze, and Tattoos anywhere you get podcasts. And remember that booze is spelled B-O-O-S. I hope to see you all soon. Bye!
The door was shut and locked, and the seal of the faculty was affixed to it. And I was entrusted with the charge of heating their chambers in the winter, so that they may neither too hot or too cold. I was further to see that they did not escape. If any accident of any kind happened, it was to be severely punished. I did not like this charge. And as I remembered that the matter was most important, and that the College of Sages were not wont to say what they did not mean, I was filled with fear. But since I had to bear that which I could not alter, and since the chamber was situated in a strong tower, and surrounded with battlements and lofty walls, and moreover, it could easily be heated with a gentle and continuous fire. I called upon God for help, and I began to heat the chamber. But what happened? As soon as they felt the grateful warmth, they also fell to embracing each other so passionately that the husband's heart was melted with the excessive ardor of love, and he fell down broken into many pieces. And when she, who loved him no less than he loved her, saw this, she wept for him, and, as it were, covered him with overflowing tears, until he was quite flooded and concealed from view. But those complaints and the tears did not last long, for being weary with exceeding sorrow, she at length destroyed herself. At last, what fear and anguish fell upon me when I saw those who had been so straitly committed to my charge laying, as it were, melted and dead before me. I felt sure that I would be put to death for it. But the jeers and the derision and the contempt which I would have to undergo seemed more grievous even than death. In this anxious state of mind, I spent several days, until the thought occurred to me that if Medea had restored a dead body to life, I may perhaps be able to do the same thing. But I cannot think of no better plan than to keep up the warmth of the chamber. Keep up the warmth of the chamber until the water should have evaporated, and the dead bodies of the lovers could again be seen. So what we're talking about is this process, this alchemical process. So this is the... All right, I got all this right on hand because I just did that Pentecost sermon. If you're interested in getting more in depth with this, the Magnum Opus of Alchemy is a great episode to get into, and you can find that on the feature topic link. If you go to the feature topic link and find sermons, there's two. There's an Easter and a Pentecost sermon that I did. I just did the Pentecost sermon last month, and it gets into the alchemical process as it relates to the Tower of Babel. And you're like, what are you talking about? And yeah, so I have this stuff like right on hand just because I just did this sermon. So let me just talk about this alchemical process real quick, because it seems like we're getting into it here in our parable. Right? So the first step is taking something, the prime material, that is called the negretto, and this is the black, right? In the little song that I've been singing this whole episode, the black and white are all I see. In my infancy, then red and yellow, then came to be. So this is the black. This is the negretto, the first step, the prime material. The next step is called the albedo. So in the Pentecost sermon, I talk about the psychological crisis. And whenever I do, I wind up using the tarot card of the moon all the time. Well, lately, nowadays anyways. So the albedo is the white. This is the moon, the white. It's the washing away, the breaking down. It's the breaking down portion. So this is, if you think about this glass tower where the Negretto's been, we took the Negretto, and then, the guy's heart fucking melted, and this woman fucking cried a bunch, and she fucking died, and all this stuff. This is the albedo. This is the white. This is the breaking down. And then the next step is the yellowing, or the citronetus. And this is the dawn. This is the unification. It's the recombining and reconfiguring, leaving us transmuted. This is the philosopher's stone. This is the rubetto. This is the red that's associated with the gold and the yellow. So that Pentecost sermon is it is on Patreon and Subscribestar, but it's public there. Like you don't have to be a supporter to listen to it. It's just there. So if you're interested in it, and you should be, it's a fantastic episode, and it's all about when the world comes out of lockdown. Basically is what it's all about. So it might be relevant and poignant to your life right now as well. So it's for free. You just have to go to Patreon or Subscribestar to listen to it. That's all. It's a special episode. It's the sermon in quarantine. Learn more on Advertise.com. So, back to it. I doubted not that then I should most honorably escape from all danger. So I kept up. So listen, I kept up the fire for 40 days, and the water diminished from day to day, and the dead bodies began to reappear now. However, they looked black as coal. This effect would have been produced sooner if the chamber had not been so closely shut and sealed that I could no wise open it. For I noticed that the water rose to the roof of the chamber and then came down again like rain. I could not find no exit from the chamber until the dead bodies had putrefied and began to give out a grievous smell. In the meantime, the rays of the sun shining upon the moisture of the chamber produced a most beautiful rainbow, and after all my sorrows, the sight of its gay colors filled me with great delight. I was particularly pleased to see my lovers lying before me. But this is no joy without a drop of bitterness, so I was disturbed by the thought that those who had been committed to my care were lying lifeless. Nevertheless, I comforted myself with the reflection of the chamber must still contain their souls and their spirit. Therefore, I continued diligently to perform my office of warming them, being assured that they would return to their bodies while they could not enjoy what moist atmosphere. This conjecture was justified by the event, for towards evening I noticed that many vapors rose from the earth through the heat of the sun. They were lifted up as water is attracted by the sun, and afterwards, when night fell, they watered the earth as fertilizing dew, and washed our bodies, which became more beautiful and white. The oftener the sprinkling took place, and whiter they became, and the more quantity of moisture in the air diminished, until at last the atmosphere was too thin for the spirit and the soul to remain therein any longer. So they were at length compelled to return to their clarified body of the queen, which, to my great joy, was straightway restored to life. My joy was all the greater because now she was arrayed in a beautiful and magnificent garment, such as rarely seen by mortal eyes, and had a glorious crown made out of diamonds on her head, and thus attired she stood on her feet and cried, "Knowing this, ye mortals, and let it enter your heart that the Most High God is one God who has the power to set up and pull down kings. He makes the rich and poor as he wills, and he killed and raised again. I was great, and I was brought low, but now, having been humbled, I have been made queen of many more kingdoms, or should that be queendoms? After death, life had been restored to me, and when I was poor, the treasures of the wise were mighty and committed to me, and therefore I, too, can make the poor rich, and give grace to humble, and restore the health of the sick. But I am not yet able to raise my beloved brother, the most mighty king, from the dead, and nevertheless, when he comes, he will show that my words are true." And she had thus spoken. The sun lighted up the world in the glorious rays, and the heat waxed great, for the dog days were approaching. Long before this, garments of rich black silk, of gray or ashen-colored damask, of rare white silk embroidered with silver, precious pearls and brilliant diamonds, he had been gotten ready towards the marriage of our queen, and now the garment of many colors, of fresh colors, orange and saffron, of red and scarlet silk, richly embroidered with the rubies and the carbuncles, were being prepared for the adornment of our new king. But there was no one to be seen working at those garments, yet one after another one got ready, insomuch that I greatly marveled, because I knew that none of the bride or the bridegroom had entered the chamber. My wonder increased when I observed that each dress was finished. Those who had been there before straightway vanished, although I could see no one putting them away. Now, when the most precious scarlet garment had been finished, the great and mighty king appeared in a great splendor and indescribable magnificence. And when he saw that he was shut in, he besought me in the most persuasive accents to open the door, as it would be to my advantage to let him out of the chamber. Now, though, I had been most strictly enjoined not to open the chamber, and I was filled with the awe and by the majesty and by the persuasive speech of the king, and I assented to his request. When he left the chamber, he bore himself so kindly and gently and so humbly that I could not help reflecting that these virtues are the most glorious ornaments of the great. As he had passed the dog days and the great heat, he was extremely thirsty, spent, and weary. Therefore, he humbly requested me to bring him some water from the river where it raged and it foamed under the wheels. And I gladly acceded to his request. And after slacking his thirst with a deep draught, he returned to the chamber, requesting me to shut the door carefully so that no one may disturb him or rouse him from his sleep. He slept a few days, and then he called back to me to open the door again. And he looked much more beautiful, ruddier, more royal. And he said that the water was very precious and full of virtue. And at his request, I had fetched him some more. And he took a deeper draught than before, insomuch as the size of the chamber seemed to become enlarged after drinking this water, which is lightly esteemed by the ignorant. As much as he desired, he became so beautiful and glorious that in all my life I do not remember to have seen a more glorious man or more glorious deeds. For he took me into his kingdom, and he showed me all the treasures and riches of the world, until I was obliged to confess that so far from exaggerating his power, the queen had not told me the half of it. Okay, so we had the black, we had the white, and we had the red. What's next? Of gold and of precious carbuncles there was no end. There was also to be found the renewal and restoration of youth and the natural faculties and the recovery of lost health. There's never failing panacea for all diseases. And what pleased me most of all was that people of that kingdom knew, feared, and honored their Creator, and asked to obtain of his wisdom, understanding, and after this life of eternal glory and beatitude, may this latter be given to us also by God the Father, God the Son, and God the Holy Spirit, the blessed Trinity. Amen. To whom belong praise, glory, and honor to the world without end. Amen. All right, so there it was in its entirety. Yeah, it got like real modern day Pornhub there. But I think it was interesting that it just happened to talk about this alchemical process, and I was able to have those notes like right here to kind of try to clarify it, or maybe I put too fine a point on it. But yeah, so we had like a little bit of Gnosticism, a little bit of tarot card business too, which reminds me, I forgot to mention that the tarot cards, my set of tarot cards that I designed are available. You can find them at Advertise.com. They're really cool. If you just want to check them out, I put them all up there. I did a little video for each kind of section of the deck, to kind of try to highlight or show. And it's not just like a retread of like the Waite deck, which is kind of like what a lot of people, I'm not shitting on anybody, but it's kind of like what they do. So yeah, that's it. That's the parable of the Philosopher's Stone. I'm John. This is the Abercast, Abercast.com. I'll let Hilla tell you the rest. And I'll see you guys in a few days, I'm sure. For real.
Thank you for listening to this episode. Send an email or visit us on social media to let us know what you think about this topic. And please remember to leave a 5-star rate and review.
Hey, did you learn something? Did you laugh? Supporting me is a way for you to be a part of the Abercast and ensure its growth and sustainability. It also means I can create a normal schedule for shows and bonus shows, as well as the exclusive Fellowcraft episodes. By supporting the show, you are not only a listener, but you are a part of the show. You supporting the show gives me a way to offer fun rewards as a thank you for showing your appreciation and support for our projects. Do you have an idea for a reward that you don't see? Let me know. My supporters are my partners. I currently pay for you to listen to the Abercast. Not only do I pay the hosting bills out of my own pocket, I volunteer my time and talent to each and every episode of the Abercast. The price of books, the time and resources of reading and researching, the massive amounts of gin and tonic needed, the equipment it takes to record the shows, the time and resources it takes to create the bonus material, and the cost to maintain the internet presence. Is it worth your support? I don't know. I'm proud of the Abercast, and I feel like I'm improving all the time. In addition to creating the show that you dig and that you are excited about, I also have a full-time commitment and other obligations. So why financial support? All of the supporters help me focus my time on the quality and development of the podcast. And what if you can't afford, $1 or $3 or $10 or whatever a month? Believe me, I get that. There are many degrees of support, but if you can't support the show financially, please consider leaving a 5-star rate and review on your preferred podcast app. And don't forget that you can sign into the mailing list and still unlock a lot of bonus content. Thank you. I cannot put into words how much it means to me that you listen to the show each time I post a new episode. Your feedback, support, and love of the stories that we talk about here is what keeps me going.